The Desperate Father and the Billionaire's Unexpected Kindness, a rain-soaked revelation. Hook. "Please help us! My daughter is soaked and freezing!" David yelled over the drumming rain, clutching Lily to his chest, the water pouring down his face, mixing with tears he wouldn't admit. The woman under the black umbrella watched the drenched man holding the tiny girl. Her eyes reflected doubt, but she extended her free hand. "Get in the car. I'll take you somewhere safe," she responded. Her voice firm yet kind. "We don't need charity," David retorted, though his arms tightened around Lily as he felt her shiver. "It's not charity, it's humanity," the woman countered. "Besides, that child needs to dry off before she gets sick." David looked around. The city streets were deserted under the storm, and the shelter had turned them away for lack of space. He had no options. "All right," he finally conceded. "If you've ever been in a desperate situation, you know this feeling. Hit that like button if you can relate. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single moment of this incredible journey. Leave a comment below. What would you do in David's shoes? The storm descends 12 hours earlier. David Miller had received his last paycheck from Phoenix Construction. Mr. Harrison, the site foreman, had given him an awkward pat on the shoulder. "I'm sorry, David, we lost the contract, and we have to downsize." David had nodded in silence, putting the envelope with his severance pay into his pocket. It would barely cover a month's food, and that was stretching every penny. The eviction notice he found taped to his door when he got home was like a punch to the stomach. "What's wrong, Daddy?" Lily asked, her big brown eyes identical to her mother Emily's. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just some boring paper," he lied, tearing off the notice and stuffing it into his pocket. 3 days. He only had 3 days before the landlord threw them onto the street. David prepared dinner with the leftover beans, while Lily colored at the small kitchen table. "Look, Daddy, I drew our new house," the girl said, showing him a drawing of a big house with a garden. David's heart ached. Since Emily died giving birth to Lily, he had struggled alone. 5 years of low-paying jobs, of caring for his daughter with the occasional help of neighbors, of promising her that one day they would have a better life. And now this. The morning of the 3rd day, as he packed the few belongings they could carry, the rain began to fall. By noon, it had turned into a storm. At 3, when the landlord knocked on his door demanding the keys, David took Lily, a small backpack with documents and some clothes, and stepped out onto the street. "Where are we going, Daddy?" "To find a special place, my love." They walked several blocks to the municipal shelter, only to find it full. The social worker suggested trying another area, 20 blocks away. "I'm sorry, we don't have transportation to offer you," she apologized. By the time they had walked 10 blocks in the rain, David's jacket no longer protected Lily. It was then that the black BMW stopped beside them, and the window rolled down. The woman observing them wore an impeccable black suit and had eyes that seemed to see straight through David. "Do you need help?" she asked, and now they were in her luxury car, Lily trembling against David's chest, while the stranger drove in silence. "My name is Sarah Evans," the woman finally said. "And you?" "David Miller, and she's my daughter, Lily." Sarah nodded, looking in the rearview mirror at the girl who was now fascinated by the car's interior. "What were you doing in this storm?" David hesitated, but pride was no longer an option. "We were evicted today. I lost my job at the construction company 3 days ago." Sarah didn't reply immediately, her eyes fixed on the road as she made a decision. "I have a guest apartment in my building. Can you stay there tonight?" "We can't accept." "Of course you can," she interrupted him. "And if you want to earn your keep today, it turns out I need a driver. My previous employee resigned last week." The car stopped in front of an elegant building in Manhattan. The doorman opened the door with an umbrella, while the valet took care of the car. David had never been in a place like this. Sarah led them to the private elevator that went directly to her penthouse. Upon entering, an elderly woman in an apron greeted them. "Mrs. Hayes, please prepare the guest room and a hot bath for the girl," Sarah ordered. "And bring some dry clothes we might have. I think the donation box is still in the storage room." Lily looked at everything with wide eyes, from the windows that showed the city to the elegant furniture. "Are you a princess?" she asked Sarah innocently. Sarah smiled for the first time since picking them up. "No, little one. I just have a job that pays well." While Mrs. Hayes took Lily to bathe, Sarah offered David a towel and dry clothes. "The guest bathroom is over there," she pointed. "Afterwards, we can talk about the job details, if you're really interested." "Why are you doing this?" David asked. "You don't even know me." Sarah looked away towards the window where the rain continued to fall. "Let's just say I know what it's like to feel lost, even surrounded by all this." 2 hours later, after having dinner that Mrs. Hayes had prepared, Lily was playing with some new toys that Sarah had ordered for her. David watched from the sofa, still uncomfortable but grateful. "So, do you accept the job?" Sarah asked, sitting across from him. "I pay well, and it comes with the guest apartment, at least until you find something better." "I'm a construction worker, not a driver," David replied. "We are all many things when we need to be," she said with a sad smile. "I myself was a waitress before inheriting my father's company." Something in the way Sarah looked at Lily caught David's attention. It was an almost familiar gaze. "I'll think about it," he finally replied. As David tucked Lily into bed in the guest room, the girl showed him a drawing she had made. "Look, Daddy, it's Ms. Sarah, you and me. We're happy because it's not raining anymore." David kissed her forehead, moved by his daughter's simple hope. In the living room, Sarah held her phone with trembling hands. The crescent moon-shaped birthmark she had seen on Lily's shoulder while Mrs. Hayes was changing her was identical to the one Emily, her sister lost years ago, had. "Robert, I need you to investigate something urgent," she said softly. "Find out everything you can about David Miller and his daughter Lily. Yes, it's personal and confidential. I think I just found my niece." As the rain continued to beat against the windows, 3 lives began to intertwine in ways none could have imagined that morning. Sometimes, Sarah thought, looking towards the room where her guests slept, storms bring more than water. They bring second chances. What do you think Sarah's motivations truly are? Pure kindness or something more? Share your theories in the comments. Unveiling the past. The soft hum of the BMW's engine resonated gently as David waited outside the corporate building of Evans Developments. He had been Sarah's driver for a week and still felt like a fish out of water. The black suit she had insisted on buying him fit well, but it itched at his neck as a constant reminder that he didn't belong in this world. "You'll get used to it," Mrs. Hayes had told him that morning as she adjusted his tie. "Ms. Sarah isn't like other rich people. She has a heart." The glass doors opened, and Sarah emerged, accompanied by a tall man in an impeccable suit, who looked at her with obvious interest. David quickly opened the car's back door. "George, I'll see you at the Friday meeting," Sarah said in a professional tone. "Are you sure you don't want me to accompany you to the charity dinner?" the man insisted, placing his hand on Sarah's arm with familiarity. "I'm sure, thank you," she replied, getting into the car. When David sat behind the wheel, he noticed Sarah looking out the window with a tense expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, starting the car. "Yes, just office problems?" "Office problems," Sarah replied, then changed the subject. "How was Lily's first day of preschool?" David's expression softened. She was nervous at first, but when she saw the art supplies, she forgot I existed. Sarah smiled. She has talent. The drawings she made yesterday are impressive for a 5-year-old. She takes after her mother, David commented without thinking. Emily was an artist. Well, she wanted to be. She painted when she could afford materials. An odd silence filled the car. David didn't usually talk about Emily, much less with a stranger. But something about Sarah inspired trust in him. What happened to her? Sarah asked with a carefully neutral voice. David gripped the steering wheel. Complications during childbirth. The doctor said it was an embolism. They couldn't do anything. Sarah looked out the window, hiding her expression. I'm so sorry, David. The rest of the ride passed in silence until they arrived at a private school in an exclusive area. David looked at the building in surprise. I thought we were going to the office. Change of plans. I need to pick up some papers for tonight's event, Sarah explained. And I thought you'd like to see the kind of school where Lily could study. They have an excellent scholarship program. David looked at her suspiciously. That's very kind of you, but Lily is fine in public school. At least take a look, she insisted. There's nothing wrong with wanting the best for your daughter. As they toured the facilities with the principal, David had to admit the place was impressive. Spacious classrooms, a complete art studio, expansive gardens. Every corner screamed privilege in a way that made him feel uncomfortable and attracted at the same time. Our mission is to develop the individual talent of each child, the principal explained. If your daughter has artistic aptitude, our program would be perfect for her. Back in the car, David was quiet. I'm not trying to buy your gratitude if that's what you think, Sarah said suddenly. Then what are you trying? David asked, looking at her in the rearview mirror. To help. Is it so hard to believe? In my experience, no one gives something without expecting something in return. Sarah smiled sadly. Maybe you're right. Maybe I do want something. To feel like I'm making a real difference in someone's life, not just signing checks for foundations where I never see results. That afternoon, while waiting for Sarah outside a meeting, David received a call from Lily's teacher. Mr. Miller? Your daughter had a small accident during recess. Nothing serious, just a scrape on her knee. But she's asking for you. David looked at his watch. Sarah would be in a meeting for at least another hour. I'm on my way, he said, without thinking of the consequences. When he arrived at the school, he found Lily sitting in the infirmary with her knee bandaged and teary eyes that lit up when she saw him. Daddy! She exclaimed, extending her arms. David hugged her, feeling the familiar lump in his throat that appeared every time Lily needed him, and he feared not being enough. I'm here, sweetheart. Does it hurt much? Not anymore, Lily replied, showing a brave smile. The teacher put a special Band-Aid on it that heals fast. Leaving the school, David realized his dilemma. He had left Sarah without transportation. He took out his phone to apologize when a message arrived first. Mrs. Hayes told me about Lily. Don't worry about me, I called a taxi. Take her home and let her rest. That night, after putting Lily to bed, David found Sarah working in the penthouse living room. She looked up from her laptop. How's the patient? Better. Thanks for understanding this afternoon. Sarah gestured, dismissing it. Children are the priority. Always, she said, and then added, my sister used to draw just like Lily, with that same concentrated expression, biting her lip. You have siblings? David asked, surprised she had never mentioned it before. Sarah's expression darkened. I had a younger sister, Emily. She died years ago. The name made David tense, but he attributed it to coincidence. Emily was a common name. I'm sorry, he simply said. Sometimes I see something of her in Lily. Sarah continued, her voice distant. It's strange how some people remind us of others. In her private study, later that night, Sarah reviewed the preliminary report Robert had sent her. David Miller, 32 years old, no criminal record, construction worker with good references, married to Emily Johnson, maiden name unknown, who passed away 5 years ago. The date coincided with her sister's disappearance. Her phone rang. Sarah Evans. Ms. Evans, this is Robert. I found something interesting. The girl, Lily, has a birthmark on her right shoulder, crescent moon-shaped. Sarah closed her eyes, holding back emotion. Like my sister. Exactly. Also, the original birth certificate has a curious detail. The maternal surname is incomplete. It only says Emily J., as if she had wanted to hide her complete identity. Keep investigating, Robert. I need to be completely sure. A brewing storm. 3 days later, Sarah took David to a construction site on the outskirts of the city. What are we doing here? He asked, confused. This is one of my smaller developments, she explained. And it has a problem. The site manager resigned last week, and things are behind schedule. I thought maybe you could take a look. David looked at the blueprints she handed him with professional interest, which he couldn't hide. Here's the error, he said, after studying them. The drainage system is miscalculated. If they build it like this, they'll have leaks in less than a year. Sarah smiled. And what do you suggest? For the next hour, David explained in detail how to solve the problem. His eyes shone with passion as he talked about structures and materials. You're wasted as a driver, Sarah commented. What would you say if I offered you to manage this site? The salary would be triple what I pay you now. David looked at her, stunned. Why would you do that? Because you're good, and because I need someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong, as you just did with these blueprints. That afternoon, when picking up Lily, David was still considering the offer. The girl ran out, showing him a drawing. Look, Daddy, I drew Aunt Sarah. David was surprised to hear the nickname. Aunt Sarah? Yes, she told me I could call her that when she came to my school yesterday. Did Sarah come to your school? Lily nodded excitedly. She talked to my teacher about special art classes for me, and she brought me these new pencils. She showed him a box of professional pencils that David knew cost more than his weekly salary. That night, he found Sarah on the penthouse terrace. Why did you go to Lily's school? Sarah didn't seem surprised by the question. I wanted to see how she was adapting, and her teacher mentioned her artistic talent. We don't need charity, David insisted, though with less conviction than before. It's not charity, David. It's genuine interest, she replied, looking him directly in the eyes. Lily reminds me a lot of someone I lost. And you? You remind me that there are people worth knowing outside my bubble. The moment was interrupted by the doorbell. Sarah frowned. I'm not expecting anyone. Mrs. Hayes appeared with a worried expression. Ma'am, your mother is here. Before Sarah could respond, an elegant woman in her 60s burst in. Sarah, why aren't you answering my calls? George told me you've been acting strange and… She stopped when she saw David. Who is he? Mother, I'd like to introduce you to David Miller, my… Sarah hesitated. My new project manager. Mrs. Eleanor examined him up and down with barely disguised disdain. Since when do your employees live with you? David and his daughter are in the guest apartment temporarily, Sarah explained with forced calm, while they find a suitable place. A child, too? The woman looked horrified. Have you lost your mind? George was right. George should mind his own business, Sarah cut in. David cleared his throat uncomfortably. Excuse me, I'll go check on Lily. As he walked away, he clearly heard Mrs. Eleanor say, A man like him will never belong in your world, Sarah. Remember your responsibility to the family business. In the room, David found Lily asleep, hugging a new teddy bear he didn't remember seeing before. On the nightstand, there was a framed photograph, Lily and Sarah, in what looked like a park, both smiling at the camera. David sat on the edge of the bed, feeling that his life had turned into a strange movie where he was the lost protagonist between two realities. On one hand, the security and opportunities Sarah offered them. On the other, the certainty that, as Mirror's Eleanor had said, they would never truly belong in that brilliant, privileged world. He caressed Lily's head, remembering Emily, and wondering what she would have advised. "You always said the important thing was to be happy, my love. But I don't know if we can be happy here, where everything reminds us of how little we have." The sound of raised voices from the living room brought him back to reality. Whatever Sarah was planning, it was clear that not everyone would agree. And David wasn't sure he wanted to get caught in the middle of a family war that wasn't his. The Hope Project. The morning sun illuminated the steel beams of the Hope Project as David supervised the pouring of concrete for the foundations. He had been a construction manager for 2 months, and though he would never admit it aloud, they were the best working months of his life. "Mr. Miller, the modified blueprints have arrived," announced Liam, the newly graduated young engineer David had hired. "Thanks. Let's review them after lunch." From the observation platform, David could see the entire construction site. What was once a vacant lot was now taking shape as an affordable housing complex. Sarah had trusted him completely, giving him the freedom to make decisions and hire staff. His phone vibrated with a message. "Meet for lunch? I'm nearby." David smiled unknowingly. "Boss, you have a lovesick look on your face," Liam joked. "Mind your business, young man," David replied, though without real anger. Half an hour later, David was waiting at a small diner across from the construction site. Sarah arrived dressed more casually than usual. Jeans, a simple blouse, and her hair tied back. She still looked elegant, but less unattainable. "How are things progressing?" she asked after ordering. "We're a week ahead of schedule and 5% under budget," David reported proudly. "George couldn't believe it when he saw the numbers," Sarah commented, her eyes shining. "He said you must be cheating." "And what did you tell him?" "That maybe we should put him in charge of a site in the rain to see if he can do better," she replied, laughing. Sarah's laughter transformed her face, making her look younger, freer. It was a side of her that few knew, but that David and Lily saw more and more frequently. "What are you doing this weekend?" she asked suddenly. "Well, nothing special. Maybe take Lily to the park." "I have a better idea," Sarah said. "There's an art exhibition at the Cultural Center. It has an interactive area for children where they can create their own works." Over the past few months, these outings had become routine. Sarah took them to places David would never have considered accessible. Museums, outdoor concerts, small restaurants by emerging chefs that she discovered. In return, David showed her his New York, colorful markets where vendors already knew him, a hidden taco stand with the best street tacos, the park where street musicians gathered on Sundays. "Your eyes light up when you talk about art," David commented as they walked through the exhibition that Saturday, watching Lily participate in a painting workshop. "It was my sister's dream," Sarah replied softly. "I followed the safe path. Administration, business. She wanted to be an artist. My parents objected, of course." "What happened to her, if you don't mind talking about it?" Sarah looked away. "She left. One day she packed her bags and disappeared. My parents said she had died in an accident abroad, but I never completely believed that story." The topic hung between them like so many other half-told truths. That night, after putting Lily to bed, David found Sarah on the penthouse terrace with a glass of wine, and her gaze lost on the city's horizon. "Do you mind company?" he asked. "On the contrary." They sat in silence for a moment until Sarah spoke. "Are you happy, David? With your job? With all this?" "More than I've been in a long time," he admitted. "Lily is flourishing in her new school. She loves the art program. And you?" David chose his words carefully. "I appreciate everything you've done for us, but sometimes I wonder why." Sarah turned to look at him directly. "At first, it was because Lily reminded me of my sister," she confessed. "But then I met you. The way you fight for your daughter, your honesty, your view of the world so different from mine. You make me want to be a better person." The tension between them was palpable. David slowly approached, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Sarah remained still, her eyes never leaving his. When their lips met, it was as if something clicked into place, something they both had been waiting for without knowing it. The moment was interrupted by the sound of David's phone. He pulled away, breathing deeply. "I'm sorry, I have to answer. It could be something about Lily." But it wasn't about Lily. It was his old landlord, Mr. Rodriguez. "Hey, David, we found some of your boxes in the building's storage. Looks like you left them when you moved out. There are photos and papers. Do you want them, or should we throw them away?" David's heart skipped a beat. "No, don't throw them away. I'll pick them up tomorrow." "Tomorrow at—" When he hung up, Sarah looked at him with curiosity. "Everything okay?" "Yes, it's just, they found some old boxes with my stuff in my old apartment. Photos of Emily that I thought I had lost." The revelation. A family reconnected. The next morning, David picked up the boxes. Inside he found photo albums, letters, and Emily's drawings. He had forgotten how much Lily resembled her mother. The same expressive eyes, the same luminous smile. Among the photos was one that squeezed his heart. Their civil wedding. Simple and quick. Emily wore a simple white dress and held a small bouquet of wildflowers. They looked so young, so full of hope. When he returned to the penthouse, he found Sarah playing with Lily. The girl was running around, showing her a new drawing. "Aunt Sarah, look, I drew our family. You, Daddy, and me." Sarah looked up and saw David with the boxes. Something in his expression must have alerted her. "Lily, why don't you go get your new paintbrushes? I want to see how well you paint with them." When the girl left, David placed the boxes on the table. "I found photos of Emily. I thought you'd like to see them, since you say Lily reminds you of her." Sarah approached with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. She picked up the wedding photo and froze. Color drained from her face. "What's wrong?" David asked, alarmed by her reaction. With trembling hands, Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. Her, younger, next to a woman who was identical to the one in David's wedding photo. "My sister," Sarah whispered. "Emily Evans." David felt the world stop. He took the phone, looking at the image again and again. "It's not possible," he murmured. Emily never mentioned she came from a wealthy family. Her name was Emily Johnson. That's what it says on our marriage certificate. "Johnson was our maternal grandmother's maiden name," Sarah explained, her voice choked. "She must have used it to hide herself." The revelation fell upon them like an avalanche. Lily was not only David's daughter, but also Sarah's niece, the granddaughter of the Evans family. "Did you know?" David asked, his voice hardening. "All this time you gave me a job? You took us in because Lily is your niece." "Not at first," Sarah replied, tears forming in her eyes. "I suspected when I saw her birthmark, identical to Emily's. I hired an investigator, but I wasn't completely sure until now." David ran his hands through his hair, overwhelmed. "Why didn't you tell me when you started to suspect?" "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared of being wrong. Scared that you would take Lily away if you knew the truth. My family, my mother, turned their back on Emily when she decided to follow her own path. They pressured her to marry someone from our social class. When she refused, they treated her as if she were dead. And then she really died," David said bitterly. "Without her rich family by her side, just with me, a simple construction worker who couldn't afford a better hospital." David, I didn't know. No, of course you didn't know, he interrupted. Because no one bothered to really look for her. Do you know what she told me before she died? That she had no family. That it was just Lily and me. Now I understand why. The sound of something falling startled him. Lily was at the door, her new paintbrushes scattered on the floor, and her big eyes full of confusion. Why are you fighting? She asked in a small voice. Is it because I drew our family wrong? David and Sarah exchanged glances, their argument interrupted by the child's innocence. No, sweetheart, David said, approaching to hug her. Your drawing is beautiful. Aunt Sarah and I were just remembering your mommy. My mommy in heaven? Lily asked. That's what she called Emily, since she was old enough to understand. Sarah knelt beside them, her eyes meeting David's over Lily's head. In them was pleading, regret, and something deeper that neither was ready to name. Yes, little one, Sarah said softly, and it turns out your mommy in heaven was also my sister, which means you and I are real family. Lily's eyes widened with childish astonishment. So I can call you Aunt Sarah for real, not just pretending. For real, Sarah confirmed with a sad smile. While Lily processed the news with the simplicity of a child, the adults remained caught in a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, loss, connection, and the possibility of healing. That night, after Lily finally fell asleep, excited about her new family, David found Sarah in the living room, still looking at the photos. What are we going to do now? He wondered. I don't know, she replied honestly. But what I do know is that I don't want to lose you, either you or Lily. You're the closest thing to a real family I've had in years. David sat across from her, the table between them filled with memories. Did you kiss me because I'm your sister's widower? He asked directly. No, Sarah replied without hesitation. I kissed you because you are you, David, the man who has shown me a world more authentic than the one I've lived in my whole life. David picked up a photo of Emily, pregnant and smiling at the camera. She warned me about your family. She said they would never accept us, that it was better to stay away. She was right then, Sarah admitted. But things can change. I have changed. The silence stretched between them, full of possibilities and unexpressed fears. I need time to think, David finally said. This is too much. Sarah nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. What neither of them knew was that fate had other plans. While they navigated the turbulent waters of this revelation, other forces were already moving. George investigating Sarah's sudden obsession with David and his daughter, and Mrs. Eleanor preparing to protect the family legacy at all costs. Among the photos scattered on the table, one showed Emily smiling in front of an easel with a half-finished painting. 3 figures holding hands under a stormy sky, with a ray of sunshine breaking through the clouds. As if, somehow, she had foreseen that one day, the separate worlds of the people she loved would find a bridge to unite. This emotional roller coaster continues. What do you think Mrs. Eleanor will do next? And can David and Sarah truly bridge their 2 worlds? Hit that subscribe button and share your thoughts in the comments. The reckoning and a glimmer of hope. Sarah's office seemed like a battlefield of papers and open folders. She had been submerged in work for 3 days, avoiding returning early to the penthouse, where the silence between her and David had become deafening. Ma'am, Mr. Evans is asking if he can come in, her assistant announced over the intercom. Sarah sighed. The last thing she needed was to deal with George. Let him in. George entered with his usual air of confidence, carrying a folder under his arm. Sarah, good to find you. The board is worried. You've canceled 2 important meetings this week. I'm busy, George. They can survive without me for a few days. He sat down uninvited, observing her with that calculating gaze that always put her on guard. "Does it have to do with your permanent guest?" The construction worker turned manager. Sarah looked up, her eyes cold. "David is an excellent professional. The Hope Project is ahead of schedule thanks to him. And coincidentally, he lives with you," George commented, with false casualness. "Along with his daughter. A very domestic situation. My personal life is none of your business or the board's." George smiled humorlessly and opened the folder he was carrying. "Normally I'd agree, but when your personal life could affect the company, it becomes everyone's business." He slid a document towards her, Lily's birth certificate. The maternal surname was clearly visible, Johnson. "Where did you get this?" Sarah demanded, paling. "Basic investigation. Something you should have done before opening your doors to strangers," George replied. "Johnson was your maternal grandmother's maiden name, wasn't it? An interesting coincidence." Sarah maintained her composure, though inside she felt herself crumbling. "Get to the point, George. The board will meet tomorrow to discuss your ability to continue leading the company," he announced. "Your recent behavior, your emotional decisions, your apparent discovery of a lost niece, everything indicates that you might not be in a position to handle your father's legacy." Sarah stood up, furious. "Don't you dare use my family for your ambitions, George." "I'm not the one using the family, Sarah," he retorted, also standing up. "It's you, trying to compensate for the loss of your sister with this man and his daughter. The board deserves to know if its decisions are being made by the president of Evans Developments or by a woman desperate for a family." After George left, Sarah slammed the desk in frustration. Everything was falling apart around her. She picked up her phone to call David but put it back down. What could she tell him? That now her position in the company was at risk for having taken them in? Her phone rang. It was Robert. "Ms. Evans, I have urgent information. I've been following Mr. Evans as you asked. He just met with your mother." Sarah's heart sank. If her mother got involved, things would only get worse. Meanwhile, at the Hope Project, David was supervising the installation of beams when he received a call from Lily's school. "Mr. Miller, there was an incident. An elderly woman tried to pick up Lily, saying she was her grandmother. When we asked for identification, she got upset and threatened to call her lawyers." David felt his blood run cold. "Is Lily okay?" "Yes, we followed protocol. We didn't let her take her, but the woman insisted she had rights over the child." David left the site immediately. Upon arriving at the school, he found Lily calmly drawing in the principal's office, oblivious to the drama. "Daddy!" she exclaimed upon seeing him. "A lady said she was my grandma, but I told her my grandma is in heaven with Mommy." David hugged her tightly. Fear turned to relief. "You did well, sweetheart." The principal took him aside. "Mr. Miller, the woman said her name was Eleanor Evans. She mentioned something about legal rights as the child's grandmother." David felt a dull rage grow within him. So Emily's family, who never cared about her in life, now wanted to claim her daughter? As he drove back to the penthouse with Lily, his mind raced. Perhaps he had been naive to think they could build a life in Sarah's world. Maybe Emily was right to keep them away from the Evanses. Upon arriving, he found Sarah waiting for them, looking distraught. "Your mother tried to take Lily," David said without preamble as soon as he entered. "I know, Robert told me," Sarah replied. "I swear I had nothing to do with it." "How can I believe you?" David retorted. "Since you found out who Lily was, everything has gotten complicated. George investigating us, now your mother trying to take my daughter." "She's my niece too," Sarah defended. "And I won't let anyone take her, not even my mother." "Daddy, why are you angry?" Lily interrupted, tugging on his hand. David knelt down to her height. "I'm not angry with you, sweetheart. Go to your room and put away your school things, okay? We'll talk later." When Lily left, Sarah approached. My mother and George are conspiring. They want to take control of the company from me. They're using my relationship with you and Lily as an excuse. Is that what worries you? Your company? David asked incredulously. No, I'm worried about you. George has been spreading rumors. He says you intentionally approached me, that you knew who I was from the beginning. David laughed humorlessly. Perfect. So now I'm a gold digger who planned all this. You know I don't believe that, Sarah said. But the board meets tomorrow and what? You're afraid your reputation will be tarnished by associating with us? It's not fair for you to say that, Sarah protested. I'm trying to protect us all. Just like me, David replied. And I think the only way to do that is by getting away from here, from your world. The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken words. Would you leave? Sarah finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Would you take Lily away from me? I don't want to, David admitted. But I also can't risk your mother finding some legal way to take her from me. Emily warned me about them, about how they would try to control everything. Sarah moved closer, taking his hands. We're not all the same, David. I'm not like my mother. For a moment, David wanted to believe it was possible, that they could find a path together. But the fear of losing Lily was stronger. I need time to think, he said, releasing her hands. That night, while Lily slept, David began packing some things. He didn't know where they would go, but he felt they needed to be ready to leave. The sound of the door surprised him. Sarah was there, watching him. You don't have to run, she said. No? Your mother already tried to take Lily once. What will stop her next? Me, Sarah replied with determination. I have proof of what George has been doing, manipulating financial data, diverting funds. Robert has been investigating him for weeks. And what does that have to do with us? That I can use that to keep us safe? The board won't dare challenge me when I expose George. And my mother, Sarah paused. She needs to understand that times have changed. David sat on the bed, exhausted. When Emily was dying in that public hospital, after giving birth, she made me promise I would take care of Lily, that I would protect her. She said her family never accepted her for choosing love over money, and that they would do the same with our daughter. Sarah sat next to him. My sister was right then. But people can change, David. I have changed since I met you, and I believe my mother can change too if we give her a chance. And if she doesn't, then we'll face her together, Sarah replied, taking his hand. You're not alone in this, David. Not like you were when Emily died. The mention of Emily made David remember the happy moments before the tragedy. How they had met in that cafe where she worked while trying to sell her paintings. How they had married in a small civil ceremony with barely 2 witnesses. How they had painted the small room for the baby they were expecting together. Emily always said that someday we would understand why things happened the way they did, David murmured. I never thought she meant this. The intimate moment was interrupted by a cry from Lily. Both rushed to her room to find her agitated in bed, burning with fever. She's burning up, David exclaimed, touching her forehead. Sarah acted quickly, calling her private doctor, while David tried to bring down her fever with wet cloths. The doctor says to take her to the clinic immediately, Sarah informed him. It could be an infection. Time seemed to stop as they carried a semi-conscious Lily to the car. In the midst of the chaos, their differences were forgotten, united by shared fear for the child they both loved. A night in the hospital and a mother's change of heart. At the private clinic, the doctors immediately took Lily to examine her, leaving David and Sarah in the waiting room. She's going to be okay, Sarah said, squeezing David's hand. She's strong like her father, like her mother. David nodded, too worried to speak. At that moment, Companies, board meetings, and social differences didn't matter. Only Lily mattered. The doctor came out an hour later. She has a rather aggressive respiratory infection. We're treating her with intravenous antibiotics. She'll need to stay for a couple of days. Can we see her? David asked. Yes, but she's sedated. She needs to rest. Lily looked so small in that hospital bed, connected to monitors and IVs. David painfully remembered the last time he had been in a hospital, holding Emily's hand as life left her. I can't lose her too, he whispered. Sarah approached and hugged him from behind, resting her head on his back. You won't lose her. We're in this together. They remained silently, watching over Lily's feverish sleep. Hours later, the room door opened. Mrs. Eleanor entered, stopping short at the sight. David dozing in a chair next to the bed, and Sarah holding Lily's small hand. Robert called me, she said softly. He said the girl was sick. Sarah tensed. Are you here to threaten us with lawyers again? Mrs. Eleanor slowly approached the bed, observing Lily's face. She looked so much like Emily when she was little, she murmured. The same curls, the same mouth. Does it matter now? David interrupted, waking up. After ignoring her existence for 5 years. I didn't know she existed, Mrs. Eleanor replied, her voice breaking. When Emily left, we hired detectives. We looked for her for months. Then we received that report, that she had died in an accident abroad. We never knew about the baby. Sarah looked at her mother in surprise. You looked for her? You always said that if she left, it was her decision. It was easier to pretend indifference than to admit how much her absence hurt, the elderly woman confessed. Your father never recovered. He died believing he had failed as a father. David listened, confused by this new version. Emily told me her family had rejected her for choosing me. Mrs. Eleanor shook her head. Did we pressure her? Yes. We wanted her to finish college before getting married, to consider other options, but we never rejected her. She was the one who cut off all contact. Silence fell over the room as each processed these revelations. Was it possible that everything had been a misunderstanding? That years of pain and separation had been caused by pride and lack of communication? Lily stirred in bed, her eyes slowly opening. Daddy, she called weakly. David immediately approached. I'm here, my love. The girl looked around, noticing the two women. Aunt Sarah smiled faintly, and then fixed her gaze on Mrs. Eleanor. Who is the lady? A moment of hesitation, and then Sarah replied. She's your grandmother, Lily. Your mommy in heaven's mom and mine. Mrs. Eleanor held her breath, tears forming in her eyes as she heard those words. Lily studied the older woman with childish curiosity. Are you my real grandma? The lady at school also said that. Yes, I'm your grandmother, Mrs. Eleanor replied, her voice softening in a way Sarah hadn't heard in years. And I'm so sorry I scared you at school. It wasn't the right way to meet you. The fever rose again, and Lily fell back into a restless sleep. The three adults remained around her bed, the future as uncertain as the storm beginning to form outside. In that hospital room, as the rain beat against the windows, something began to change. Not an immediate happy ending, but the first shaky step towards a possible reconciliation. Three adults united by their love for a child, by the memory of a woman lost too soon, and by the still fragile possibility of healing old wounds. Outside, lightning illuminated the broken sky, like the half-truths that had marked their lives until now. But even in the worst storms, eventually, the clouds open, the turning tide, and a mother's atonement. The clock in the waiting room read 3 in the morning. David returned with 2 coffees and offered one to Sarah, who accepted it with a tired smile. The doctor says her fever is going down, he informed her, sitting beside her. The antibiotics are working. Sarah nodded, grateful for the good news. They had been at the hospital for 2 days, taking turns being with Lily. Mrs. Eleanor had also been present, bringing toys and books for when the girl was awake. "You know," Sarah commented after a sip of coffee, "I don't remember the last time I saw my mother behave like this. So human." "People change when children are involved," David replied. "Children have that power." A comfortable silence settled between them. The last 48 hours had put everything into perspective. George's threats, family disputes, even their own insecurities, seemed small compared to Lily's health. "Are you still thinking of leaving?" Sarah finally asked, her voice barely audible. David sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know what to think anymore, Sarah. These days have been—" "I know," she completed, understanding perfectly. The waiting room door opened, and Robert, the investigator, entered with an urgent expression. "Ms. Evans, excuse me, but it's important." Sarah immediately stood up. "What's wrong, Robert?" "I found what you were looking for about Mr. Evans," he said, handing her a folder. "He's been diverting funds from social projects to offshore accounts. More than $5 million in the last 2 years. David watched Sarah's face transform as she reviewed the documents. The businesswoman re-emerged, momentarily replacing the worried aunt. "This is exactly what we need," she murmured. "The board meeting is in 6 hours. "You're not thinking of going?" David interjected. "Lily needs you here." Sarah looked at him, torn between her two worlds. "If I don't go, George will win. He'll use my absence as proof that I'm not fit to lead. I could lose control of the company, and then I wouldn't have any way to protect us." "Go," Mrs. Eleanor said, appearing at the door. "I'll stay with them." Everyone turned, surprised by the offer. "Mother, I know George better than you," the older woman continued. "I brought him to the board when your father died, thinking he would be good support for you. Now, it's my responsibility to correct that mistake." Sarah looked at David, undecided. "Go," he repeated. "Resolve this once and for all. We'll be fine." The Evans Development's boardroom was full when Sarah entered, dressed in the same suit from 2 days ago, but with renewed determination. George presided over the table, clearly surprised by her appearance. "Sarah, we didn't expect to see you today," he said, recovering quickly. "We understood you had family matters to attend to." "And I do," she replied, taking a seat at the opposite head of the table. "My niece is in the hospital, recovering, but I also have responsibilities here." "Niece?" one of the board members asked. "We didn't know you had a niece." George quickly intervened. "It's a complicated situation. In fact, it's part of what we wanted to discuss today. Sarah's apparent emotional instability and how it's affecting her corporate decisions." Sarah smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Emotional instability? Interesting accusation coming from someone who has been stealing from the company for years." A murmur ran through the room. Sarah opened the folder Robert had given her and began distributing copies of the documents. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you evidence of how our CFO has diverted more than $1 million from our social projects to personal accounts in Panama and Switzerland." George's face paled as the board members reviewed the documents. "This is defamation," he stammered. "A distraction to divert attention from her erratic behavior, taking in a stranger and his daughter, pretending they're family." "I'm not pretending anything," Sarah replied calmly. "David Miller was married to my sister Emily. His daughter Lily is my niece, the granddaughter of the Evanses. And if anyone doubts this, my mother is willing to confirm it." The mention of Mrs. Eleanor caused a silence in the room. Everyone knew that the Evans matriarch did not back false stories. "Your mother, Sarah?" George seemed genuinely confused. "But she was the one who suggested I investigate this man." "My mother has changed her mind," Sarah said, as people usually do when they discover the truth. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah presented not only the evidence against George, but also a new plan to restructure the company's leadership. More transparency, more social projects, less hierarchy. By the time she finished, the board was on her side. George was escorted out of the building by security, while Sarah received congratulations from the board members, who hours earlier had contemplated ousting her. Upon returning to the hospital, Sarah found David asleep in the chair next to Lily's bed, who was now awake and drawing with the pencils Mrs. Eleanor had brought her. "Aunt Sarah!" the girl exclaimed, her voice stronger than in previous days. "Look what I drew for you." Sarah approached to see a colorful drawing, 4 figures holding hands, identifiable as Lily, David, Sarah, and an older woman, who must have been Mrs. Eleanor. "It's beautiful, little one," she said, kissing her forehead. "Are you feeling better?" "Yes. The doctor says we can go home soon." David woke up, blinking to clear his vision. "You came back," he said with a smile. "How was it?" "George is no longer a problem," she simply replied. "And here?" "The fever disappeared," David reported. "The doctor says she'll probably be able to leave tomorrow if she keeps this up." Mrs. Eleanor entered with a bag of food. "I brought decent lunch," she announced. "Hospital food is terrible." Sarah watched in amazement as her mother took out containers and arranged a small feast on the bedside table. It was a side of her she hadn't seen in decades. Practical, maternal, without worrying about appearances. As they ate, conversing with a naturalness that would have seemed impossible days ago, Sarah felt that something fundamental had changed. The painful revelations, Lily's illness, even the confrontation with George, had served to break down walls that had been standing for years. Later, when Lily was asleep again, and Mrs. Eleanor had gone to rest, Sarah and David went for a walk in the hospital gardens. "Robert found something else," she said, breaking the silence. "Letters, Emily's letters, that she left with a notary to be delivered 5 years after her death." David stopped, surprised. "Letters for whom?" "For you, for my family, for Lily when she grows up," Sarah replied. "The notary has been trying to locate us for months. Have you read yours?" Sarah shook her head. "I want us to be together when we open them. All the letters." "It's what Emily would have wanted." David nodded, moved by the consideration. "When Lily is better," he agreed. They sat on a bench under a tree that offered shade against the afternoon sun. They didn't need to talk. The silence between them was now a place of peace, not tension. "Do you know what was the first thing I thought when I saw you that day in the rain?" Sarah asked after a while. "That we were a soggy mess?" David joked. "No," she smiled. "I thought, that man would do anything for his daughter. You reminded me of everything my father wasn't, everything I hoped to find someday." David took her hand naturally. "And I thought you were too elegant to be real, like a character from those movies Emily loved." They laughed together. The mention of Emily no longer tinged with pain, but with a shared memory, almost sweet. "She would have approved of us, you know," David said after a moment. "She always said I needed someone to challenge me, not let me stagnate. And she always told me I needed someone to show me real life, outside our bubble," Sarah responded. "I think in some way she was preparing us to meet. A garden wedding and a new home." A week later, Lily was discharged. To everyone's surprise, Mrs. Eleanor insisted on organizing a small celebration at her house, not Sarah's penthouse. "It's time this family gathered as it should," she declared, with a tone that admitted no discussion. The Evans mansion, an imposing construction in the Hamptons, intimidated David when they arrived. But inside, instead of the coldness he expected, they found a warm atmosphere. Colorful balloons, a table with Lily's favorite snacks, even a small, improvised art studio in a corner of the garden. "Grandma, this is amazing!" Lily exclaimed, running to hug Mrs. Eleanor. who had become her accomplice during the days in the hospital. The older woman returned the hug with genuine affection. "Only the best for my granddaughter." Sarah watched the scene with moist eyes. Her mother, the cold and distant woman she had known all her life, was transforming before her eyes. Among the guests were few but significant: Robert, Mrs. Hayes, some board members who had supported Sarah, and Liam, the young engineer who worked with David. During the celebration, Sarah caught everyone's attention with a glass in her hand. "I want to make an announcement," she said. "The Hope Project will have a new focus and a new name: the Emily Miller Community Center. It will be a development not only of affordable housing, but also a community center with a special emphasis on arts and support for single mothers." She looked at David, who watched her with pride. "And it will be directed by the best builder I know, David Miller, who will also have a partnership in this and future projects." Applause filled the place as Lily jumped excitedly. "My daddy is going to build beautiful houses for everyone." When the guests began to disperse around the garden, Robert approached Sarah and David. "Ms. Evans, Mr. Miller, there's something you need to see." He led them aside, handing them a thick envelope. "The notary's letters arrived this morning. Also, during my investigation, I found this." He showed them an old local newspaper clipping, a small article about a student art exhibition, with a photo showing two smiling young women. One was clearly Emily. The other, a girl who looked at the first with admiration. "The girl on the right is Emily Evans," Robert explained. "The other young woman is named Olivia Peterson. She was Emily's classmate at art school and her best friend, according to my interviews. She currently runs a small gallery in Chelsea. She said Emily gave her some paintings before she disappeared." Sarah and David exchanged surprised glances. Another piece of the puzzle, another connection to Emily they didn't know existed. "There's so much we don't know," Sarah murmured. "So many parts of her life yet to discover." Robert discreetly excused himself, leaving them with the envelope and the photograph. It wasn't the time to open it, not during the celebration. But its presence was like a promise. The story hadn't ended. It was just beginning to fully reveal itself. As the afternoon progressed, David found Mrs. Eleanor contemplating an old family portrait on the wall. Sarah's father, herself younger, teenage Sarah, and Emily, barely a smiling child. "She was identical to Lily at that age," the woman commented, without turning around. "Same eyes, same mischievous smile." "Emily always said her daughter would be an artist," David replied. "Looks like she was right." Mrs. Eleanor turned to look at him. "I made many mistakes with my daughters, David. I was too rigid, too controlling. I lost Emily because of it. I almost lost Sarah, too. I won't make the same mistake with my granddaughter." Her sincerity disarmed David. "I think we all deserve second chances," he finally said. The woman nodded gratefully. "My husband and I had so many plans for our daughters. We wanted to protect them from the world, give them everything they needed to succeed. We never understood that what they really needed was the freedom to find their own path." In the garden, Sarah watched Lily paint at the easel her grandmother had prepared. The girl had the same concentrated gesture as Emily, her lower lip slightly bitten, her head tilted, totally absorbed in her creation. David approached from behind, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "About how strange life's paths are," Sarah replied, leaning against him. "About how sometimes the most painful losses can lead us to the most significant encounters." "Emily would be happy," David said, "to see us like this, to see Lily surrounded by family." "She is," Sarah affirmed with certainty. "Somehow she is." The celebration concluded at sunset. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Eleanor surprised everyone with another announcement. "I've been thinking. This house is too big for me alone, and Sarah's penthouse, though luxurious, doesn't have a garden for Lily to play. Why don't you all consider moving in here? There's more than enough space." Sarah looked at her mother, speechless. "Mother, are you sure?" "Completely," the woman replied. It's time this house felt like a home again, not a mausoleum of memories. As they got into the car, with Lily already asleep in the back seat, Sarah and David processed this last unexpected twist. "What do you think?" she asked. "About my mother's proposal." David smiled. "I think Lily would love that garden. And maybe, just maybe, it's time we stopped thinking about separate worlds and started building one together." Sarah took his hand on the gear shift. "I like the sound of that." In the back seat, Lily slept peacefully, hugging the teddy bear her grandmother had given her. In her other hand, she clutched the drawing she had made that day. A big house with a garden, exactly like the one she had imagined years ago when they lived in that small apartment, but now with 4 smiling figures in front of it. Sometimes, the simplest dreams are the ones that come true when we least expect it. This is such a beautiful ending to this chapter. If you're moved by this story of family, resilience, and unexpected love, please hit that like button. And if you want to be part of our community and hear more inspiring tales, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Share your thoughts in the comments. What was your favorite moment in this story?